Hey, good morning. It's Jillian with Jilly Juice. So, yeah, I remember when I was younger, we were watching PBS as kids because in our household, my mother controlled the type of programs that we were watching. And one of the main programs that we were watching was PBS, and they were showing exposés on China and them digging up all of those soldiers. They had like these series that ran like every week about China. Everything was about China and the Chinese culture, the Chinese lifestyle, the Chinese history. So we were immersed in everything China in my household. Then living in San Francisco, um, there's Chinatown and uh, a very huge Chinese population in San Francisco. And then also, too, my mother went to China. And I think she took my sister to China. I was somewhere else. And so, um, and so I went to China in 2003, not to be outdone by anybody in my family. I went to China myself. I went there for 3 weeks and spent time in China. And this is in 2003. So this is before they really became um, kind of like matching the West, where before major trade and major other advances in their technology. Okay, so I was there before things started really ratcheting up as far as the technological surveillance society. So it's interesting now seeing how this playbook is being rolled out. I mean, the Georgia Guidestones and this whole thing with the depopulation agenda, the programming of generations, okay? The Disney programming, the archetypes, the movies, the teaching of sexuality at a very young age. Um, it makes you wonder. I mean, yeah, pedophilia has to do with it because they were teaching that in the 1970s. I mean, the movies, Pretty Baby and Firestarter and Weird Science. All these different 1980s movies was really grooming our kids that are now in our 40s um, to be very, very sexualized. And maybe they know whoever they is, the ones that know the esoteric knowledge that sexuality leads to not only instability, but also it leads to a shorter lifespan. And so maybe that's why you're also seeing the sexualization of children at a young age because they mature faster. And when you mature faster, especially in this day and age, and they're not doing julie juice, they die faster. And so this thing with the George Floyd, the virus, the George Floyd, the BLM, the Antifa, all of that are like reminding me of the the Chinese Red Guard, the cultural revolution. And actually interesting that I was thinking of this before I went onto YouTube. I went onto YouTube and I found one video where one lady was talking about how this BLM and Antifa destroying monuments, destroying old historical statues is a reminder of the Chinese Red Guard and them destroying history because now they want to rewrite history and start over again. So that's kind of what you're seeing. You're seeing a playbook of ripped right out of the 1960s and 70s Chinese cultural proletarian revolution, where they are whipping the wage earners up into action, just like me, denigrating the university people. I'm like, oh shit, I'm definitely playing into their hands, but there's a reason why. Okay, because yeah, the intellectuals, the elderly back then in the 1960s, they were being targeted. All the different government officials were being, uh, you know, drawn and quartered type of thing, and I'll tell you what, it was a pretty horrific time. I think like millions and millions and millions of people died back then. Now, or are we going to have the same thing where we're going to be drawing and quartering our officials? Are we going to be going after all the intellectuals, those that are in university, all the scientists and everything? Well, you're seeing kind of, yeah, we're doing it on a technological basis, As far as actually acting them out, that's not going to happen. And if it does, I'd be very surprised. But you're seeing, I would say, well, obviously an awakening. But what they're going to do instead of killing millions and millions of people, where everyone's like anarchists, and they're bringing all the government officials and all the intellectuals and all the scientists out to the streets, they're just going to take the scientists have figured out how to take microbes and destroy them at the cellular level. And so I hate to say this, but Trump is whipping up the proletariat. Yes, he has a certain base that does make a lot of money, um, but some of these Republicans that are for Trump are also, well, they're part of the establishment. They're part of supporting Israel. Um, it's so messed up. Any way you turn, you think that you kind of figure out who the players are and who the good guys and the bad guys are. Then you get surprised, then you get disappointed. And so what it all comes down to is at some point we're going to see, yes, you're seeing right now a bit of history, bits of pages of history being pulled out and then being perpetrated and being imposed upon this next generation. And the spear campaign, the social distancing campaign, um, the microbial warfare, the wearing of the masks, the stress on those that are already immunocompromised. It's instead of having 6 or 7 or 8 million people die because of people destroying or going after the intellectuals, they're going to destroy at the micro level, and it's going to be the patriots, it's going to be the BLM and the Antifas. Already we're seeing a programming of the next generation with, of course, Disney. Um, of course, you're seeing, of course, well, after, see, I don't know how this is going to work. Okay, so in the last 10 years, the conspiracy community has been really huge. The anti-government people have been really huge the last like 10 years. And this is since I've been married. So anti-government. So you're going to see another generation of anti-government people. Okay? Which I understand because yes, when government is the one that is teaching you how to be healthy and you're seeing cancer disease and chronic illness, well, not only are they already taking care of, not only is the agenda of inducing cancer disease and chronic illness in the population, but now we're going to go after those and expose those that are causing this. But guess what? Who funds both sides of the wars? Somebody that's over there that probably has an address that is seeing, okay, they're funding both sides of the wars. Both sides are they're going to win. Okay, well, how does it mean that they're going to win? Well, because people are already dying with cancer disease and chronic illness, they're okay with getting chemotherapy, they're okay with inducing antibodies, they're okay with getting vaccines, they're okay with getting prescription drugs and holistic drugs. And then the ones that realize this, like me, is going after them, and we're just basically fighting each other. We're not actually changing the system, really. We're just fighting each other because the real agenda is in the fabric. It's in the university system. It's where the place that parents want to send their kids because they think it has some kind of status and some kind of like, oh, for you to be viable in this society, you have to go to college and do this and that. So, of course, yes, like some people said, it's indoctrination. And it's not only that, yes, it is a molding of a generation. And yeah, you're going to see more of a type of Chinese Red Guard. Basically, you're looking at the communist rollout right now, and it's going to be ebbing and flowing. There's so many campaigns that are going on at this point that it makes your head spin. Some of you have focused on certain campaigns, but have not really made the connection of all the campaigns are all actually interconnected. But you're only focused on one, and when you're only focused on one, you don't see the hidden hand taking care of the other and destroying it at that level. Because I know some of you that are like chemtrail activists, okay? And when you're chemtrail activists, I understand you're probably right. They are probably doing something to the skies and geoengineering and whatever, and the fallout's going to be you having a compromised immune system. But you realize that if you don't if you don't break the spell of the programming, if you don't purge out the excess antibodies, what good is your chemtrails? Knowing what they're doing as far as the grooming and the programming and all of the the false flags, I guess. Knowing this history, I mean, those are like Neil Pasco, Jason Christoff, Luke Rudkowski, all these different very illuminated beings in the anti-government world. What good is you knowing all of this stuff if you're going to die in the future? If you're not even going to be able to be around to change the future? See, that's what I'm really trying to, and that's why I rejected so much of the anti-government people, because it didn't make sense. If they weren't going to do dilly juice, then what's the point of them having this belief system? What's the point of exposing the elite if you're just going to die in the next maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years, if that? Because as soon as they ramp up the vaccines, guess what? We already have somebody here in my town that's going to be in the first vaccine trials. And guess what? She's gonna shed. He's going to release. He's going to influence the environment yet again. We'll see another uptick of people just weakening or dying relative to their immune system. And so, I don't understand why those that are trying to raise the awareness and making money off raising the awareness, but they're not doing anything to help themselves as far as regenerate. And they follow me, but are they doing anything what I'm doing? Are they even telling their friends, like their audience of like thousands and thousands? Or are they selling pills, powder, supplements, and detoxes and exercise regimes? And so, you know, it's it's a little disconcerting for me knowing that I have this protocol that can break the spell, break the programming. And yet, even the most woke people are so asleep at the micro level. And while yes, it's very exotic and very, I don't know, exotic, very attractive to be woke, to show people, oh God, look what they're doing. Does it matter if it's Democrat or Republican? No, this whole thing with the elections, it's not going to matter whether it's Biden or Kamala or Harris. Biden and Harris. It's not going to matter if it's, Biden or Trump. The agenda's already going to go through. They already laid the groundwork. Who is they? Well, those that are funding both sides of the war. Okay? The groundwork has already been laid. Now it's just a matter of manifesting it and triggering the different points. Just like the BLM and the Antifa attacks. That was a very organized attack. And guess what? It was in the Democratic run cities. Well, does it mean that the Republicans are absolved? No. It just means that you can paint any kind of scenario that you want people to think that's going on. So anyways, you know, Mike, whatever. I know. All right, I'm gonna get. That's just not even. You're so focused on that, Mike, that I don't think you're really ready for my information, because you're so focused on this age of consent that, like, if you are that tunnel to think about that's kind of weird. If that is your only focus, is that. And it's almost like you can't help but just keep focusing on that. So I'm gonna delete that comment and delete you off my Facebook, because you don't really have anything to contribute of any value that I can see, except for the sensationalized stuff. So whatever. Yeah, I mean, with this thing with the pedophilia stuff, we have people who really just focus solely on that. They can't seem to branch out, so all I get from them is pedophilia type stuff. And I understand the concern, but if you can't, like, branch out and understand that there is a definite microbial programming going on, then what's the point? Then what you're doing is just feeding the beast. I mean, there's one thing to raise awareness. There's another thing to feed the beast. And so I try to touch upon so many different things so that you see the bigger picture, but it's not going to make a difference if Trump gets into office, if Kamala and Biden get into office, because look who runs the House and the House of Representatives and the Senate. Look who runs all the different cities. It's a mixture of both Democrat, Republican. We have Republicans that are supporting Israel. Okay, we have Democrats that are destroying San Francisco. We have a Republican here who's all into this social distancing here in Ohio, okay, who is taking on, Democrat characteristics. So now it's kind of all interchangeable. It's not going to matter who is in office. It's more for the show. When I have my government really anxiously wanting me to register to vote, which I'm already registered to vote, but you know what? I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote. And I'm going to say why. Because there's no point in it. And you're like, oh my God, that's so un-American. Do you realize what's un-American is what's going on? Okay? Um, the thing with the vaccines, the thing with the hydroxychloroquine, the allowing of big pharma, the allowing of the medical industry with Dr. Fauci with no checks and balances, allowing them to basically run and destroy your economy and run your life where that's all you go to is that, okay? As far as, when you're sick. And there's nobody checking them. I mean, yeah, okay, what does the FDA do? They just make sure that the drugs are okay. But there's no checks and balances with doctors and nurses. There's none. Oh, you can say the Joint Commission of whatever, JACO, that oversees the hospitals. That's just seeing, just the different processes. But that's not checking to see, hey, is maybe antibodies? Antibodies, is that really a good, healthy thing for people? No one has questioned any of the medical community, any of pharma as far as antibodies. They just measure how much is too much relative to the general population, and they measure the general population. Oh yeah, we have a lot of people with lupus and cancer and disease and chronic illness, so this many antibodies in this drug, well, is a little bit too much, but we want to lessen the antibodies. So when we lessen the antibodies, we'll only kill you a little bit, but not like all, outright. And it's like, okay, okay. So that's what's concerning is that, Trump still subscribes to that foundation. He still subscribes to the big pharma, big tech corporation, the United States corporate of America. I'm going to be honest, say, yeah, that we're not what we thought. We probably never were what we thought. And I know it sounds very unpatriotic and un-American, but I think the idea of America was really awesome, and that's what was the great song and dance and the marketing thing, is that you bring people over here from another country, and they now are able to be free to express, be free for the most part, be free to make money and send it over to different countries or make money, but really the whole reason why we brought in immigrants was to build up our society. And so that's what the 2012 Olympics were for. The opening ceremonies was to go through the succession of the immigration, the Industrial Revolution, and putting in place all the different people to run the society. And they need the population to build up, and they needed the brain power from different people. So if they mess with the biochemistry, you'll get a stronger brain power from like a guy like Einstein, or a guy like Hawking, or a guy like Steve Jobs or Zuckerberg. Okay, and then we'll put these different people in place, and we're seeing that that a lot of these people that are in positions of power or CEOs have been groomed by someone or something to do these things, to be the face of, to 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 roll out some kind of invention. And it's interesting how they come out of the college system. The college is the major brainwashing system, okay, where they do experiments on humans, where they do manipulate specific biochemistry to get a specific type of result, a thought process. Okay, like Stephen Hawking, where the whole body is basically decrepit and atrophied, but only his brain works. Makes very interesting. And then he teaches about black holes. Okay, and then he put a bunch of formulas and a bunch of information in front of him. He studies it all and he puts it all together. Says, okay, this is my theory. Here's this. Here's that. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I mean that's the thing, is that. But now we don't need the population that much anymore. So when you don't need that much of the population anymore, now it's time to recalibrate and release the excess. And so right now, what's going on in our society is like a whole, it's like an autophagy. It's like an epiphysis. It's like we are being jelly juiced, but not because we're killing people, it's because we're releasing the excess. So in a lot of ways, what's going on is, I guess, every 100 years or so, the powers that be are like, okay, I mean, look, China has 1 billion people. So if like 1 or 2 million died back in, the 1960s, or 3 million based on the Cultural Revolution, that's not really enough. Now there's got to be something that's going to be even more so. But then you need people for an army to then control other people. So now you got to figure out how do you create armies, and then that is this whole thing of this new generation, these millennials, and then the generation of millennials, children, the zillennials, whatever, are going to be programmed to then be told what to do, to be socially distanced, to be only accountable to the state, and weakened, but then some will be strong, and maybe there'll be a new breed of policemen, a new breed of army. I'm just kind of figuring out what's going to happen in the next near future, what it is that they're rolling out. Because for you to have, well, we won't need a huge army if we had more compliant people. Hmm. I'm just trying to figure it all out. But doing Julie Juice will help break the spell to where I don't know what's going to happen in the future. We know that pedophilia is a problem. We know that sexualizing children at a young age is a problem. Is it something that we focus on 100%? Well, I'm seeing it now for what it is, and I'm now watching old 80s movies, the ones that I missed when I was younger because I couldn't watch it. And so, I'm seeing more evidence of it, but now we have to really focus on uh, breaking that spell of programming that was forced upon us as children as well as adults. I'm already seeing people that I went to high school with their 16-year-olds that look like they're in their 20s. And they don't mind just pimping out their kid out there for everyone to see. Oh yeah, this is my 16-year-old. Look how beautiful she is, and she's in this bikini, and I'm like, oh my god. Which, okay, fine, but 16 and your average, I mean, that's making somebody ripe for human trafficking. And so when we put out our 16-year-olds as if they were 20 years old, it's like, yeah. And so it's concerning, yes, but that's kind of the programming. And so when it's all around you and it's in the movies and TV and cartoons, and you're busy working, yeah, your kids are going to be programmed by the state. And you bring your kids to public school, and they're going to learn things in public school that you're probably not even aware of. Yeah, it's going to be very difficult not to have your kid take part in all of this. And so I'm just going to be looking out for indicators on what's to come. I just see different pages from different playbooks being pulled out and then being imposed upon us. So just be aware, listen to what the mainstream media is saying, and be aware. I mean, as far as your kids, well, you'll figure that out with your kids. There's nothing I could say for you as far as how to raise your kids, because you all have different circumstances that you will not have any choice but to have your kid be programmed by the state. And who knows what that's going to look like. So all I can say is good luck to everybody. But I think the only saving grace that you have at this point, because Pandora's box has already been opened, is do the jelly juice. Is do the jelly juice, because it's not going to get any better. Like I said, it's going to get worse before it even gets better. I'm probably thinking around 2050s when things will probably get better. It'll be an ebb and flow, but you're going to have to really learn how to roll with the punches. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.